When I reached the property that Saturday morning and found Sasha in tears in the kitchen, I knew I had made the gravest error of my existence. She stood by the sink, her hands immersed in sudsy water, her shoulders bowed as if bearing the entire planet's burden. Her hair, normally so impeccably maintained, was haphazardly secured in a messy bun. The shadows beneath her eyes were so pronounced it appeared she hadn't rested in days. She was weeping silently, the way women do when they lack the very energy to vocalize their sorrow. Behind her, in the open concept living area adjoining the kitchen, at least 8 individuals were present. There was Omar's mother, Denise, the very woman who had regarded me from the outset as if I were merely an impediment in her journey. His 2 sisters, Taylor and Morgan, with their shrill voices and laughter that sounded like derision. The younger brother, Derek, with his wife and their 2 children, rampaging through the house with absolute abandon. All of them were sprawled across the furnishings as though they owned the establishment, clamoring for coffee, requesting additional toast, and exclaiming that the preserve was depleted. And my daughter, my Sasha, was catering to them. She was serving as though she were domestic staff in her own dwelling. "Sasha, where is the sugar?" one of the sisters shrieked, not even deigning to look at her. "Sasha, these eggs are frigid. Prepare new ones for me," Omar's mother, Denise, commanded, her tone brooking no dissent. My daughter moved back and forth like a phantom, complying with every directive, drying every dish, enduring every disrespectful remark. And I, standing in the entryway, felt a surge of fury climbing from the depths of my 70-year-old core. This was not the outcome I had envisioned. This was not the reason I had purchased this residence. It had been precisely 1 year and 6 months since Sasha had extricated herself from her initial marriage. It had been 18 years with a man who inflicted emotional and psychological abuse upon her in every conceivable manner, without ever resorting to physical violence. He would ignore her for weeks. He would tell her she was worthless, utterly useless, and that she had irrevocably damaged his life. When she finally mustered the fortitude to request a divorce, he seized everything: the house they had jointly acquired, their savings, even the automobile I had gifted her upon her 30th birthday. Sasha arrived at my doorstep with 2 suitcases and a spirit utterly shattered. For months I observed her drift through my living room like a spectre, uncertain of her path, unsure how to forge a new beginning at 43 years of age. She wept nightly, believing her opportunity for happiness, for a family, for a personal place in this world had vanished forever. And I, as a mother, as a woman who had navigated her own trials, resolved to take action. I had amassed $5,000, funds I had set aside over 30 years of diligent work as a bookkeeper. Money I had squirreled away for my retirement, my twilight years, ensuring I would not be a burden to anyone. But witnessing my daughter in such a state, I understood that this money possessed a far more significant purpose. I discovered this modest acreage on the periphery of the city. It was not expansive, but it was undeniably beautiful. 5 acres of land adorned with fruit-bearing trees, a 3-bedroom dwelling, and a generously proportioned kitchen with windows that offered a view of the garden. The cost was $52,000, necessitating a $7,000 loan from the bank. But my concern was non-existent. The moment I saw the look on Sasha's face when I presented her with the keys, I knew my decision was sound. "It's mine, Mum?" she inquired, her eyes welling with tears. "Is it truly mine?" "Yours and no one else's," I assured her, embracing her tightly. "A sanctuary where you can commence anew, where no one will ever diminish your intrinsic value." We wept in unison that day. We wept tears of joy, of optimism, of the profound sense that circumstances were finally poised to improve. I had envisioned Sasha residing there in tranquility, tending her garden, perhaps even launching a small-scale patisserie. Her lifelong aspiration. I had pictured her at peace. This, however, was beyond my wildest imaginings. I had never foreseen that 6 months later, she would encounter Omar at a supermarket, that he would prove so captivating initially, so attentive, so utterly unlike her former spouse. I had never conceived of them marrying with such haste, scarcely 4 months after their initial meeting, and I certainly could not have anticipated him bringing his entire family along, a clan that had now transformed my daughter's haven into their personal encampment. "Vivian, what a delightful surprise," Denise remarked as she finally acknowledged my presence at the kitchen threshold. Her tone was saccharine, yet her eyes held an icy glint. "We weren't expecting you today." "This is my daughter's property," I stated calmly, though I was seething internally. "I can visit whenever I please," she replied with a smile that lacked any warmth. It was the smile of someone who believed they had already triumphed, who held absolute sway. "Indeed, indeed," she conceded, rising from the sofa and approaching me with the self-assurance of someone who felt they owned the very ground beneath their feet. "Although technically it now belongs to your daughter and my son, they are married after all. What belongs to one, by extension, belongs to the other." A prickling sensation spread across my skin. This woman understood precisely what she was doing. She knew exactly which emotional triggers to press. "Sasha!" I called out, never averting my gaze from Denise, that viper cloaked in respectability. "Come here, please." My daughter looked up from the sink. Her eyes were inflamed and puffy. She regarded me with a complex mixture of relief and apprehension, as if my arrival might offer salvation, yet simultaneously exacerbate the situation. "I'm occupied, Mom," she managed, her voice quivering. "I still need to finish clearing up the breakfast dishes." "Let someone else handle the cleaning," I instructed firmly. "Come here now." Denise emitted a laugh. She guffawed directly at me, as if I had just uttered the most hilarious jest imaginable. "Oh, Vivian, do try not to be so theatrical. Sasha is merely assisting with the household tasks. We are family, are we not? Families lend each other a hand." I surveyed the room. Omar's 2 sisters were sprawled indolently on the sofa, engrossed in television, their feet propped casually on my daughter's coffee table. The brother was outside in the garden, smoking without a care in the world. The children had left a chaotic trail of toys and discarded food across the floor, and not a single one of them was lifting a finger to assist. "How long have you all been guests here?" I inquired. 2 weeks, Denise responded as if it were the most commonplace occurrence. "And we plan to remain throughout the summer." Omar extended the invitation. He mentioned there was ample space, and what is the point of possessing a home if one does not share it with one's family? 2 weeks. My daughter had been enduring this domestic purgatory for 2 weeks and had not uttered a single word to me about it. "And where is Omar?" I asked, striving to maintain my composure, although with each passing second the pressure in my chest intensified. "He's gone out with his father to survey some land," Denise replied, settling back onto the sofa as if it were her personal throne. "They'll be back for luncheon. Speaking of which, Sasha, it's nearly 11 o'clock. You should commence preparations. You know, my son is rather particular about eating promptly." Sasha nodded mutely and began retrieving cookware from the cabinet with robotic movements, akin to an automaton programmed for obedience. Witnessing my daughter in this state racked my heart. This was not the woman I had raised. This was not the resilient individual who had survived an abusive union and found the courage to embark on a new chapter. I approached her and gently placed my hand on her arm. She recoiled as if my touch had seared her. And then I noticed something that sent a chill down my spine. There were red abrasions on her wrists, as if she had been vigorously scrubbing dishes and floors for hours without respite. Her hands were chapped and swollen. Her fingernails, which she always meticulously maintained, were broken and soiled. "Sasha, I need to speak with you," I stated in a hushed tone, privately. "Why don't you join us for a little while, Vivian?" Taylor, the younger sister, interjected. "We're watching a rather engaging soap opera. Sasha, could you perhaps fetch your mother a coffee?" "I did not come here to watch television," I retorted, not even glancing in her direction. "I came to converse with my daughter." "Oh, what an attitude," Morgan muttered, audible enough for me to hear. Now we can see where Sasha acquired that trait. I turned to confront her. She was a woman in her mid-30s, with unnaturally blonde hair and nails so elongated I questioned how she managed any task. She was consuming grapes from a bowl, nonchalantly spitting the seeds onto my daughter's polished wooden coffee table. "What attitude?" I inquired, my voice dangerously subdued. She offered a shrug, her gaze still fixed on the television. Nothing at all. I'm merely remarking that Sasha can sometimes be a tad sensitive, as if performing a few household chores constitutes the end of the world." I took a deep, measured breath, 1, 2, 3 times. I had vowed to myself years ago that I would never lose my composure in the presence of individuals unworthy of my emotional expenditure, that I would never grant them the satisfaction of witnessing my unraveling. But these individuals were testing the very limits of my patience. "Sasha, let us step outside," I proposed, taking my daughter's arm with a grip that was firm yet gentle. "But lunch," she began to protest. "Lunch can wait." I steered her out of the kitchen before any further objections could be raised. We proceeded toward the backyard, seeking refuge from the prying eyes and intrusive ears of that parasitic assembly. Sasha walked with her head bowed, her steps dragging as if each foot weighed 100 pounds. Upon reaching the antiquated swing set I had erected the week following my acquisition of the property, I guided her to sit. I knelt before her, disregarding the discomfort in my 70-year-old knees, and gently took her ravaged hands in mine. "Tell me," I implored simply. "Tell me everything." And then, as if a dam had burst, Sasha began to sob. Not the quiet, suppressed weeping I had witnessed earlier in the kitchen, but a profound, soul-wrenching cry. The lament of someone who had been suppressing their emotions for far too long. "I don't know how this happened, Mum," she choked out. "Everything was proceeding so wonderfully. Omar was so kind to me, so different. He made me feel special, valued. He never once alluded to his family being like this. He never disclosed that his mother was so controlling, so demanding, so utterly abusive." She nodded, tears continuing to stream down her face. "When we married, they only visited occasionally. A Sunday here, a Saturday there. Denise always made pointed remarks, but Omar insisted that was simply her nature, that she meant no harm. I tried to get along with her, Mum. I truly did." "I know, my dear, I know. But 3 weeks ago, Denise contacted Omar, claiming she needed a favor, that her landlord had significantly increased her rent, and she required temporary accommodation while she sought more affordable lodgings. Omar inquired if she could stay for a few days. I was reluctant, but how could I refuse? She is his mother. I felt a surge of anger within me, but I remained silent, allowing her to recount her narrative. "She arrived with 2 suitcases," Sasha continued. "She stated it would only be for a week, but on the 3rd day Taylor appeared with her belongings, announcing a disagreement with her boyfriend and a need for sanctuary. Then Morgan arrived, explaining her apartment was undergoing renovations. Then Derek, with his wife and children, declaring they wished to spend a few days in the countryside, and Omar offered no objection. "I can confirm," Sasha stated, shaking her head. "He acquiesces to everything. If his mother requests something, he finds it impossible to decline. He insists we owe them hospitality, as they are family, that this house is capacious enough for everyone, and that I am exaggerating when I voice my complaints. Exaggerating, I echoed, feeling the temperature of my blood rapidly ascend. Exaggerating when they are treating you as a domestic servant in your own home? Denise asserts it is my marital obligation to attend to the family's needs, Sasha confessed. She stated that this is the customary practice within their family, that a devoted wife consistently prioritizes the needs of others above her own. Sasha wiped her tears with the back of her hand, and I believed perhaps she was correct. Perhaps I am the one being selfish. Perhaps this is how conventional families operate, and I am simply unaware because I was raised solely by you. Those words struck me like a physical blow. My daughter was questioning her own worth, her right to be treated with dignity within her own residence, all due to the insidious machinations of a manipulative woman who had found a way to infiltrate her mind. Sasha, look at me, I implored, cupping her face in my hands. Look me directly in the eyes. She slowly raised her gaze. Her brown eyes, so strikingly similar to my own, were clouded with profound pain and bewilderment. None of this is normal, I asserted with unwavering conviction. None of this is acceptable. A family does not exploit you. A family does not take advantage of you. A family does not make you feel like an outsider in your own home. But Omar says, I do not care what Omar says, I interrupted her. This house does not belong to Omar. This house belongs to you. I placed it in your name. Do you recall? Your name alone is inscribed on the deed. I took specific measures to ensure that, so that no one could ever divest you of it. When I purchased the acreage, my instructions to Attorney Miller were exceptionally clear. I stipulated that the ownership should rest solely with Sasha. My own name was not even listed as a co-owner. I had learned from my own marital experience 40 years prior that a woman requires something entirely her own, something untouchable, something that bestows security and empowerment. But we are married, Sasha murmured, her voice barely audible. What is mine is his. No, I countered firmly. This dwelling is private property that you acquired prior to the marriage. Legally, it is exclusively yours, which means you are the sole arbiter of who remains and who departs. I observed a subtle transformation in my daughter's demeanor, a nascent glimmer of hope, perhaps, or a nascent spark of defiance. I cannot evict them, Mum, she whispered. Omar would never forgive me. And is he forgiving you for your pervasive unhappiness? Is he forgiving you for weeping in your own kitchen? Is he defending you from his family? Silence, a silence that spoke volumes. Where are you sleeping, Sasha? I inquired abruptly, a question that had only just occurred to me. She lowered her gaze. On the modest sofa in the living room. And your bedroom? Denise claimed she required a comfortable sleeping surface for her back, and as the master bedroom contains the newest mattress, I could bear to listen no longer. I rose from the ground with a resolve I had not experienced in years. Get up, I instructed Sasha, extending my hand. She looked at me, her expression a mixture of confusion and apprehension, swiftly wiping the last traces of tears from her cheeks. What are you going to do, Mum? I'm going to remind those individuals whose dwelling this is. I strode back towards the kitchen, Sasha following closely behind. I could sense her trembling in my wake, likely consumed by fear of the impending confrontation. But my decision was made. I had witnessed enough, heard enough, and I would not permit anyone, absolutely anyone, to subject my daughter to such treatment. Upon our re-entry, the scene remained precisely as I had left it. Denise ensconced on the sofa like a queen, the sisters lounging and engrossed in television, the children running and shouting without supervision. The disarray had worsened considerably. Juice had been spilled on the floor. Crumbs were scattered everywhere. Dirty dishes were piled high on every available surface. "Sasha, you've returned," Denise announced, not even bothering to look at her. "Splendid. I require a cup of chamomile tea and ensure it is piping hot this time. The one prepared this morning was merely tepid." I positioned myself directly in front of the television, completely obscuring the screen. All gazes converged upon me. "Excuse me," Taylor said, adopting a tone reminiscent of a spoiled adolescent. "We are watching that." "Not any longer," I declared, my voice calm yet resolute. I located the remote control, which lay nestled between the sofa cushions, and extinguished the television. "What do you believe you are doing?" Denise rose, her countenance contorting into a mask of indignant outrage. "You cannot simply enter and dictate terms, and I can and I am." I interrupted her. "This is my daughter's residence, and I believe it is time we establish some guidelines." Denise emitted a chuckle, but it was a hollow, scornful sound. "Rules, Vivian, I suspect you fail to grasp the fundamental principles of coexistence. My son is married to your daughter. That establishes us as family, and families do not require a formal set of rules for visitation." "Visitation?" I repeated the word, allowing it to linger in the air. "That is an interesting choice of term. A visit typically concludes within a day, perhaps 2, possibly a weekend if the rapport is exceptionally strong. However, you have been present for 2 weeks. This transcends visitation. It constitutes an outright invasion." Taylor rose from the sofa, her arms crossed defiably. "Look, madam, I'm not privy to whatever Sasha may have conveyed to you, but we are certainly not an invasion. Omar extended us the invitation. This is his home as much as it is hers." "No," I stated, meeting her gaze directly. "It is not. This dwelling is registered solely under Sasha's name. Omar possesses no legal claim to this property, and consequently, he cannot technically extend invitations without her explicit consent." I observed the expressions of bewilderment, surprise, and then a palpable hint of fear clouding Denise's face. "That cannot possibly be accurate," she uttered slowly. "Omar assured us the residence was jointly owned." "Omar either misled you or simply presumed a fact that is not grounded in reality." I turned to Sasha, who stood at the kitchen entrance, her eyes wide with apprehension. "Sasha, inform your mother-in-law whose home this is." She swallowed, her gaze flicking between her mother-in-law and me. I could discern the internal struggle playing out on her face, the deep-seated fear of confronting the individual who had held sway over her for weeks. But then a subtle shift occurred. I noticed her shoulders straighten slightly, her chin lift almost imperceptibly. "It is mine," she declared, her voice shaky but audible. "My mother purchased it for me prior to my meeting Omar. It is registered exclusively in my name." The ensuing silence was profound, heavy with unspoken tension. Denise regarded both of us as if she were re-evaluating the entire situation. I could perceive the mental gears turning within her mind as she strategized for a new approach, a novel method of manipulation to serve her own interests. "Well," she finally pronounced, a forced smile gracing her lips. "That changes nothing, does it? Sasha desires our presence. She is exceptionally amiable, remarkably generous, unlike certain other daughters-in-law I have encountered who are prone to selfishness and pettiness. She comprehends the inherent value of family." She was employing the oldest weapon in her arsenal, guilt, subtly implying that any objection from Sasha would brand her as a flawed individual, an inadequate wife, an unsupportive daughter-in-law. "Sasha," I stated, maintaining unwavering eye contact with Denise, "do you genuinely desire these individuals to remain here?" There was a prolonged pause. All eyes were fixed upon my daughter. I could see the internal conflict raging within her. The years of conditioning from her first marriage had instilled in her the belief that she must always be accommodating, that pleasing everyone was paramount, that expressing her true feelings would render her an abhorrent person. Sasha began, her voice weak. The truth, my dear, I urged softly. Only the truth. She inhaled deeply, and when she finally spoke, her voice carried a newfound strength. No, I do not want them here. Denise gasped as if she had been struck. Taylor and Morgan exchanged glances, their expressions registering utter astonishment. Even the children momentarily ceased their boisterous activity. You cannot be serious, Denise sputtered. After all that we have done for you, after welcoming you into our family, after my son rescued you from the predicament of being a divorced, solitary woman. And there it was, the true visage of this woman, devoid of its previous sweet, manipulative veneer, replaced by pure, unadulterated venom. Rescued? I repeated, the anger I had been suppressing finally finding its voice. Your son did not rescue anyone. Sasha had no need of rescuing. She possessed her own dwelling, her own life. If anyone benefited from this union, it was him. How dare you? Denise advanced a step toward me, her eyes blazing with fury. My son is an honorable man. He is a diligent worker. He contributes financially to the upkeep of this household. What financial contributions? I inquired. The electricity, the water? Because I imagine with 8 individuals residing here, those utility bills must have escalated considerably of late. She opened her mouth to retort, but quickly closed it. I had struck a significant nerve. Sasha, I said, turning to my daughter, who had been diligently covering the household expenses since their arrival. She lowered her gaze. I have. Omar claims his finances are strained this month due to savings for a project, and the food, this house was abundantly stocked when I departed 3 weeks ago. Now I observe the pantry is nearly depleted. I handled the grocery shopping, Sasha admitted, 3 times this week, almost $800 in total. $800. My daughter had expended $800 to sustain this family of freeloaders over the span of 2 weeks. And have they contributed anything? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Sasha shook her head. I turned back to Denise with a chilling smile. So let me ensure I have comprehended correctly. You all descended upon this location, took up residence in my daughter's home, have been consuming her provisions, utilizing her utilities, sleeping in her personal chambers, and to add insult to injury, you have relegated her to the role of your personal domestic servant. And all this without spending a single penny. We're family, Denise insisted, though a hint of uncertainty laced her tone. Kinfolk don't demand payment. You are correct, I conceded, a slow nod accompanying my words. Family refrains from charging, but they also refrain from taking advantage. Family does not demean. Family does not transform your sanctuary into your confinement. This is preposterous, Morgan interjected, rising from the upholstered seat. Mother, you are not obligated to endure this. Once Omar arrives, he will set these two in their proper place. Omar will not intervene, I stated with a conviction that even surprised Sasha, because by the time Omar makes his appearance, you will no longer be present. The entire room fell into a profound stillness. Even the youngsters ceased their movement, sensing the palpable tension. What precisely did you utter? Denise inquired, her voice dropping to a dangerously measured cadence. Exactly what you overheard, I responded. It is now imperative that all of you gather your belongings and depart. Denise regarded me as if I had taken leave of my senses. Then a stark, mirthless chuckle escaped her, brimming with disdain. You lack the authority to expel us, she declared, folding her arms resolutely. This abode is not yours to command, Vivian. It is the property of your daughter and my son. and to the best of my recollection, my son possesses an equal entitlement to reside here as any other individual. Your son may remain should Sasha deem it appropriate, I rejoined. However, your presence is unwelcome. And who exactly will be escorting us out? Taylor inquired with a sneer. You, a woman of 70 years, I presume? I advanced towards her deliberately, meeting her gaze directly. She was demonstrably taller than I and younger. Likely she perceived this as some inherent superiority. Yet I had navigated 70 years upon this earth. I had raised a child alone following the demise of my husband when Sasha was a mere 5 years of age. I had navigated professional environments populated by men who presumed to intimidate me. I had endured loss, betrayal, and suffering that this pampered individual could scarcely comprehend. Exercise caution when underestimating women of advanced years, I cautioned, my voice a low but unyielding decree. We have persevered through far too much to harbour apprehension towards individuals such as yourselves. Taylor recoiled slightly, her smug expression faltering. Sasha, Denise addressed my daughter, completely disregarding my presence and directing her attention solely to her. You will not permit this, will you? You will not allow your mother to intrude and sow discord within your marital union. Consider Omar. Reflect upon his feelings when he discovers you have ousted his family. And there it was again, the familiar pattern of manipulation, the emotional coercion, the insidious method of undermining Sasha's confidence, fostering guilt over her yearning for tranquility within her own residence. I observed Sasha begin to speak. Undoubtedly, she was about to capitulate, to offer an apology, to affirm that everything was satisfactory. But before the words could emerge, I interceded. Omar is entitled to his sentiments, I declared. However, he must grasp the fundamental truth that his wife merits respect within her own domicile, and should he prove incapable of comprehending this, then perhaps he ought to scrutinize the character of the man he is. You are actively attempting to dismantle their marriage, Denise accused, her voice escalating in volume. That is your objective, is it not? You never accepted that your daughter found a partner. You consistently sought to maintain her reliance upon you. The accusation was so utterly baseless it nearly elicited laughter. I, who had meticulously allocated my entire life's savings to furnish my daughter with autonomy. I, who had toiled through double shifts for years, ensuring she never lacked for anything. I, who had offered nightly supplications for her to encounter someone who would genuinely bring her joy. I shall not dignify that assertion with a response, I stated plainly. You have a period of 1 hour to pack your possessions and vacate this premises. 1 hour? Morgan exclaimed. Are you entirely devoid of reason? We have attire carriers, containers. The children's playthings are scattered throughout the residence. Then I suggest you commence this endeavour forthwith, rather than prolonging this confrontation. Derek, who had remained conspicuously silent, engaged in smoking outdoors, finally entered the room. He was a stout gentleman in his 40s, bearing a noticeable corpulence around his midsection and an expression of perpetual lassitude. What is transpiring here? He inquired, his gaze shifting between his mother and myself. This individual is attempting to eject us, stated his spouse, a slender woman possessing a shrill vocal quality who had remained mute until this juncture. Can you possibly comprehend? She is attempting to expel us. Derek scrutinized me from head to toe, assessing my demeanor. I detected the palpable contempt in his eyes, the implicit assumption that he could cow me simply by virtue of his gender and physical stature. Madam, he articulated, his voice attempting a menacing inflection, I believe you are experiencing a degree of disorientation. This is my brother's residence, and we are his invited guests. Consequently, you possess no jurisdiction to issue directives to us. I retrieved my mobile device from my pocket, a seemingly innocuous action, yet it instilled a collective unease. What are your intentions? Denise inquired with palpable suspicion. To summon the authorities? Do not be so utterly irrational. They possess no grounds for intervention. We have committed no transgression. I am not contemplating involving law enforcement, I responded, initiating a call to a number etched in my memory. I am contacting my legal counsel. I observed the immediate transformation in their expressions. The mention of attorney carried weight, significance. It signified legal ramifications, formal documentation, official proceedings that could not be disregarded or circumvented through facile pleasantries. The phone emitted 2 rings before a voice responded. Vivian, what an unexpected pleasure. How are you? Greetings, Attorney Miller, I announced loudly, ensuring my words reached every individual present. I require your clarification concerning the deed to the parcel of land we procured for Sasha last year. The domicile is registered solely in her name. Is that accurate? Her consort holds no proprietary claim. Correct. It is considered separate property acquired prior to the marital bond. It is registered exclusively in her name. What precisely is the source of this predicament? There are individuals present on the property who are exhibiting a refusal to depart when requested. Does my daughter possess the legal standing to demand their vacating? Unquestionably, it is her private domain. If she requests an individual to leave and that person disregards, it constitutes an act of unlawful entry. She is at liberty to contact the police and they will be compelled to escort them from the premises. I observed Denise as she absorbed every utterance emanating from the telephone. Her complexion had taken on a pallor. And should they be related to her husband, I queried. It carries no legal bearing. The statutes are unambiguous. Private property signifies that the proprietor dictates who may be present and who shall not. The fact of their familial connection to the husband confers no legal entitlements whatsoever. Excellent. My sincerest gratitude, Attorney Miller. I shall contact you should further assistance be required. I concluded the call and returned the device to my pocket. The silence within the room was absolute. Did you comprehend those pronouncements? I inquired, my gaze sweeping across each individual. If you are not off this property within the span of 1 hour, Sasha will be compelled to contact the authorities. And I assure you, such an encounter is not one you would desire. Law enforcement officers exhibit no leniency when tasked with the removal of individuals engaged in trespassing. This is utterly beyond belief, Denise murmured, absolutely preposterous. Just wait until Omar is apprised of this. Await his knowledge that his own spouse has relegated his family to the streets. Omar is at liberty to formulate his own judgment, I stated. However, this is the undeniable reality. Your family has egregiously abused Sasha's gracious hospitality. They have converted her residence into their personal temporary accommodation. They have depleted her financial resources, occupied her personal space, and treated her as a menial employee. And that chapter is now concluded. We did not engage in any such behavior, Morgan vociferated. Sasha is, as always, prone to exaggeration. She is excessively theatrical. Theatrical? I repeated, feeling the temperature of my voice descend to a dangerously low level. My daughter's hands are raw from cleaning and preparing sustenance for your benefit. She has not availed herself of her own sleeping quarters for a fortnight, having been dispossessed by your mother. She expended $800 on provisions that you all consumed with nary a word of contribution. And you characterize her as dramatic. Morgan opened her mouth to offer a rejoinder, but no sound emerged, for she was acutely aware of the truth in my assertion. They all were aware. Mother! Sasha pleaded, her voice betraying a tremor from her position at the kitchen entryway. What will transpire when Omar arrives? This was the question that had permeated the atmosphere for the entirety of the preceding duration. Omar, the husband, Denise's progeny, the individual caught in the crossfire of this familial discord. That hinges entirely upon him, I responded candidly. He may succumb to indignation. He may endeavour to champion his kin, or he may perceive this situation for what it unequivocally is, a necessary intervention to safeguard his marital bond and his wife's psychological well-being. He will side with us, Denise asserted with unwavering certainty. My son understands his proper station. He recognizes that familial ties take precedence. His family now encompasses Sasha, I declared, fixing my gaze upon her. Upon entering into matrimony with her, she became his primary concern, superseding yours. That is your conjecture, Denise retorted acrimoniously. However, a son remains perpetually a son. Blood possesses a greater viscosity than any matrimonial contract, and therein lay the unvarnished truth. This woman's deeply ingrained conviction that her son would perpetually remain hers, that no wife could ever attain precedence over his maternal figure. It was a contest that Sasha could never hope to win, not so long as Omar remained ensnared by Denise's manipulative stratagems. You have precisely 50 minutes, I announced, glancing at my timepiece. I strongly advise you to cease your discourse and commence your packing. For a fleeting moment, no one stirred. They all stood fixed, regarding me as if anticipating my capitulation, my retraction of the ultimatum, my assertion that it was all a jest, and that their continued presence was implicitly sanctioned. However, I remained resolute. I stood my ground, arms clasped, my expression unequivocally conveying my unwavering resolve. Ultimately, it was Derek who broke the silence. This is absurd. I am going to contact Omar. He retrieved his mobile device and initiated a call. We all remained in expectant silence as the digits dialed. Once, twice, thrice, an automated greeting. He is not responding, he muttered, dejectedly placing his device back in his pocket. Then I suggest you commence your packing and furnish him with the circumstances when he eventually makes contact, I stated without a trace of empathy. Denise fixed me with a malevolent glare. Were glances capable of inflicting harm, I would be deceased upon this floor. However, I had weathered more formidable expressions. I had confronted superiors who had subjected me to vehement reprimands, medical professionals who had delivered grievous prognoses, and financial institution representatives who had denied my loan applications. An enraged glare from a woman adept at manipulation would not compel me to waver. Very well, she finally conceded, her voice sharp as ice. We are departing, but this resolution will not stand unchallenged. Omar will be unequivocally apprised of the events that have transpired here today. She turned towards my daughter with an expression of profound disappointment. I trust you are prepared for the repercussions of blaming your husband and championing your mother over your marital union. It was her parting volley, her ultimate gambit to sow seeds of apprehension and remorse within Sasha's psyche. And for a fleeting instant, its efficacy was evident. I observed a flicker of fear in my daughter's eyes, her shoulders slumping. Sasha is not apportioning blame to anyone, I interjected, preempting any further damage Denise might inflict. She is asserting her inherent right to exist in a state of serenity within her own domicile. If Omar harbours reservations regarding this, then the impediment resides with him, not with her. Denise emitted a sound of derision and proceeded towards the master chamber, the very room she had commandeered as if it were her own. Taylor and Morgan followed in her wake, murmuring audibly enough for us to discern words such as ungrateful and abhorrent. Derek lingered for a brief interval, his gaze fixed upon me, conveying a sentiment that oscillated between deference and animosity. You are aware that you are precipitating a profound familial schism, are you not? If advocating for my daughter engenders such a conflict, then so be it, I responded with equanimity. He responded with a shake of his head and proceeded outdoors to gather his children's belongings. His wife trailed behind him, casting venomous glances my way as she collected toys from the floor. Once we were alone in the confines of the living room, Sasha succumbed to the sofa, her body racked with tremors. I settled beside her and enveloped her in an embrace, much as I had when she was a child experiencing night terrors. "Did I act appropriately, Mother?" she inquired, her voice fractured. "Or have I irrevocably jeopardized my marriage?" "My dearest," I said, caressing her hair, "a matrimonial union that can only persist through your acquiescence to mistreatment is not a union worthy of preservation. But I hold affection for Omar, I am aware, and it is plausible he reciprocates your affections. However, affection is insufficient when devoid of reciprocal respect, and your in-laws demonstrably lack that respect for you, and, more disconcertingly, he has failed to shield you from their transgressions." We remained in that embrace for several minutes, our auditory senses registering the scraping of suitcases, the creak of drawers being opened and closed, the muffled arguments emanating from distant chambers, the gradual dismantling of what felt like an invasion. "I am experiencing apprehension," Sasha confessed. "I fear Omar's departure, my subsequent solitude, my perceived failure in another marital endeavor. Heed my words with utmost seriousness," I instructed, taking her face between my hands, ensuring she maintained eye contact. "Should Omar abandon you because you refuse to tolerate his family's mistreatment, then consider him to have performed a service, for it would signify that he was never the man you envisioned him to be, and you deserve a far superior companionship. But I am 43 years of age, Mother. Who will desire me at this juncture? I have already faltered once before." "You have not faltered in any regard," I interrupted her firmly. "Your initial consort was an individual prone to abuse. That was not a consequence of your actions. And should this present marital alliance dissolve, it will not be attributable to your shortcomings either. The culpability rests with the men who are incapable of valuing the extraordinary women who grace their lives." She leaned her head against my shoulder, her tears flowing. Not the silent weeping from the kitchen, nor the unrestrained sobs in the garden. This was an outpouring of relief, of liberation, the culmination of years of suppressed emotions, born out of a perceived necessity to maintain fortitude, to uphold domestic harmony, to embody the role of a dutiful spouse, daughter-in-law, and woman. Approximately half an hour later, the distinct sound of approaching vehicles reached our ears. My heart rate quickened perceptibly. Omar had arrived. Sasha's posture stiffened immediately beside me, her tears hastily wiped away. "It is perfectly fine," I reassured her, squeezing her hand. "I am here. You are not alone." The portal swung open and Omar entered, a man of average stature with the initial signs of graying at his temples. Accompanying him was his father, an elder gentleman of reserved disposition, who typically contributed little to familial discussions. "What is transpiring here?" Omar inquired, his gaze sweeping across the collection of luggage amassed in the living area. "Why are they in the process of packing? Are they embarking on an excursion of some kind?" Denise burst forth from the master bedroom with the ferocity of a tempest, her countenance flushed with incandescent rage. "Omar, thank heavens for your arrival. Your mother-in-law has succumbed to a state of derangement. She is actively expelling us from the domicile." Omar regarded me with an expression of bewilderment. He then shifted his attention to Sasha. What? What is she discoursing about?" "Omar," Sasha began, her voice quivering. However, I rose to my feet and spoke on her behalf. "I requested that your family depart this property due to their flagrant abuse of Sasha's hospitality over the past 2 weeks." "Abuse?" Omar repeated as if the word lacked any discernible meaning. "They are my relations. I extended to them an invitation to remain for as long as they deemed necessary. This is not your domicile to extend such invitations, I stated calmly yet resolutely. What do you imply by not my domicile? His voice escalated in volume. I am Sasha's husband. I reside here. Naturally, it is my domicile. To inhabit a structure does not legally confer ownership upon you, I clarified. This entire parcel of land is registered exclusively in Sasha's name. It constitutes separate property that she acquired prior to your union. You possess no proprietary rights whatsoever concerning this acreage. I observed the alteration in his countenance as he processed this revelation, information he evidently either disregarded or was wholly unaware of. That does not alter the fundamental reality. We are married. What is hers is also mine. Not in this particular instance, I replied, shaking my head. And even if the property were legally considered joint, which it unequivocally is not, you would still lack the authority to invite individuals who subject your wife to mistreatment within her own dwelling. Mistreatment? Omar turned to his mother. What is she alleging? Did you subject them to mistreatment? Denise adopted her most convincing portrayal of an innocent victim. By no means, my son. We have exhibited nothing but consideration towards Sasha. She is, as always, prone to excessive emotional responses. You are aware of her disposition. My disposition? Sasha inquired, rising from the sofa, her voice now imbued with a newfound strength. What is my disposition, Omar? Enlighten me. He remained silent, clearly experiencing discomfort at being caught between his mother and his wife. Am I exhibiting excessive emotionality when I weep because your mother occupies our marital bed while I am relegated to the sofa? Sasha continued, her voice trembling yet firm. Am I overreacting when I expend my entire financial reserves to provision your family while you are accumulating funds for a venture? Am I being dramatic when I rise at 5 in the morning to prepare sustenance for 8 individuals and retire at 11 at night, only after rectifying the disarray left by everyone? Sasha, you are indeed being overly dramatic, Omar stated. However, his tone lacked its usual conviction. No, Sasha countered, taking a deliberate step towards him. I am not dramatic. I am utterly depleted. I am deeply wounded, and I am weary of your persistent disregard when I articulate that your family is causing me distress. Omar opened his mouth to respond, but found himself bereft of words. I watched as he surveyed his mother, then Sasha, and finally me. He was seeking an escape route, a means to extricate himself from this predicament without being compelled to declare allegiance. However, that avenue was no longer viable. Omar, Denise implored, her voice adopting a soft, manipulative cadence. Your wife is permitting her mother to instigate the disintegration of our familial unit. Will you permit this? Will you allow an outsider to create such a schism between us? I am not an outsider, I retorted, my voice frigid. I am the individual who procured this residence for her daughter, the woman actively safeguarding her daughter from maltreatment. And if you perceive this as an adverse action, then the issue lies squarely with you. No one is subjected to any form of maltreatment, Denise insisted. We are family. Families cohabitate, offer mutual assistance, and share communal spaces. And what precisely have you contributed to this household? Sasha inquired, her voice now amplified, resonating with confidence. What have you contributed to this abode beyond generating additional labor for me? Silence. No one offered a response, for there was none to be given. I am posing a question to each of you, Sasha continued, her gaze directed at every member of the Hayes family. How much financial contribution have you allocated towards the sustenance, the electrical consumption, the water wastage incurred through your 40-minute ablutions, the fuel expenditure from leaving the stovetop operational throughout the entire morning? I was unaware you were meticulously recording such expenditures. Morgan murmured sarcastically. I am not maintaining a detailed ledger, Sasha replied. However, when one expends $800 over a fortnight on provisions for individuals who do not even offer a token of appreciation, one inevitably begins to notice. Omar paled. $800? Yes, Omar, $800 of my personal funds, as you indicated your financial resources were constrained this month. Yet it appears your fiscal limitations do not preclude you from accompanying your father to survey potential land acquisitions, which likely entailed excursions for repasts and libations while I toiled, preparing meals for your entire contingent. I observed a discernible crack appear in Omar's demeanour, a subtle fissure in the facade that suggested all was proceeding harmoniously. Sasha, I was unaware you harboured such sentiments, he stated, his voice softening. I informed you, she countered, and now tears welled in her eyes, yet a fire burned within them. I informed you on 3 separate occasions. The initial instance you advised me against overreacting. The subsequent time you asserted that your mother was merely attempting to be helpful. On the 3rd occasion you expressed displeasure towards me and declared that I was the one with the problem, not your family. Son, Denise interjected, do not succumb to her manipulations. She is employing tears to induce guilt within you. Cease this instantly, Omar suddenly exclaimed, eliciting astonishment from everyone present. Cease this, mother. Denise recoiled as if struck. It was evident she was unaccustomed to her son addressing her in such a manner. Were you aware that Sasha has not slept in our marital bed since our arrival? Omar queried his mother, his voice vibrating with suppressed emotion. Did you realize she has been subsisting on the sofa? Did you even deign to inquire if she was experiencing comfort? I suffer from back ailments, Denise stammered. I require a firm mattress. I had assumed Sasha would be understanding. And why did you not avail yourself of one of the guest chambers? Omar inquired. Why was it imperative for you to appropriate our bedroom? Denise was rendered speechless, devoid of a suitable rejoinder, for the truth was starkly apparent. She had claimed the master bedroom by virtue of her perceived entitlement, because no one had offered resistance, because her intention was to establish dominance over the territory. Omar ran his hands over his face, drawing a deep, fortifying breath. When he resumed speaking, his voice sounded weary, vanquished. Mother, I believe it is best if you depart. What? Denise stared at him as if he had just committed the ultimate act of betrayal. Omar, you cannot possibly be serious. I am your mother. I am cognizant of that fact, and I love you. However, Sasha is speaking the truth. You have exploited her inherent kindness, and I permitted this to transpire because I was unwilling to confront the reality of the situation. Omar, I implore you. Denise's voice had now devolved into pure supplication. Do not undertake this action. Do not engender within me the perception of being a malevolent entity. My sole desire was to partake in familial camaraderie. You could have partaken in our company without necessitating a protracted residency, Omar stated firmly. You could have paid visits on weekends. We could have convened for shared meals. However this, he gestured towards the luggage, the disorder, the pervasive tension. This is not a visit. This constitutes an imposition. The very words I had uttered earlier were now emanating from the lips of her own progeny, and they possessed a far sharper sting when delivered by him. Taylor stepped forward, her countenance suffused with indignation. I find it utterly inconceivable that you would banish us for the sake of this individual, your own flesh and blood. Omar, the very individuals who were present at your birth, throughout your formative years, who were there when you required support. And for that support, I express my gratitude, Omar declared, meeting her gaze. Sasha is my wife. She is my family now too. And you treated her like an employee in her own home. How did you expect me to react when I finally opened my eyes? You didn't open your eyes, Morgan spat. They brainwashed you. That old lady, she pointed at me with contempt, came here to cause problems because she can't stand her daughter having a life of her own. I took a step toward her. Watch what you say, girl. I came here because I found my daughter crying in her own kitchen, exhausted, humiliated, treated worse than a dog. And if that sounds like causing trouble to you, then you have no idea what family means. Vivian is right, a voice we hadn't expected to hear said. Omar's father, who had been quiet all this time, finally spoke. Denise, what we did is wrong. I knew it from the start, but I didn't say anything because I never say anything. But this time I can't stay quiet. Denise turned to her husband with an expression of shock. You too, my own husband is going to side against me. I'm not against you, he said in a tired voice. I'm against what we did. We took advantage of Sasha's kindness. I watched her work like a slave these past few days and did nothing to stop it, and I'm ashamed of that. There was a moment of absolute silence. Denise looked at her husband as if she didn't recognize him. Her children looked at her, expecting her to say something, to defend them, to somehow shift the blame onto everyone else. But for the first time, Denise was speechless. Her arsenal of manipulation, her guilt tactics, her victim strategies all had failed. She was being confronted not just by strangers, but by her own son and her own husband. Finish packing, Omar finally said. His voice was firm despite the visible pain in his eyes. You can stay in my old apartment. I still have the keys. It's downtown. It has 2 bedrooms. It's not big, but it's enough until you find another place. I'm not going anywhere, Denise said, straightening her back, trying to regain some dignity. If we leave, you come with us, Omar. That is the only option. I looked at Omar, waiting. This was the moment of truth, the moment he would really have to choose between his mother's manipulation and respect for his wife. Omar looked at his mother, then at Sasha, who was standing next to me with tears streaming down her cheeks, but with her head held high. I could see the internal battle on his face, years of conditioning versus what he knew was right. No, Mum, he finally said, I'm staying here with my wife in her house, where I should have been all this time, defending her instead of allowing her to be treated like this. Denise gasped as if she had been slapped. Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of powerlessness, of knowing she had lost the control she'd had over her son for 45 years. You'll regret this, she said in a trembling voice. When she disappoints you, when this marriage fails like her first marriage, you are going to regret choosing a stranger over your own blood. Sasha is not a stranger, Omar said with a firmness I hadn't heard from him before. She is my wife, and if this marriage fails, it will be because I didn't protect her when I should have, not because she wasn't worth it. Denise looked at all of us with a mixture of pain and fury that seemed to consume her from within. For a moment, I thought she was going to continue arguing, that she would launch more accusations, more manipulations. But something in Omar's expression, in the firmness of his stance, made her realize that this battle was lost. Fine, she finally said, her voice icy. We're leaving, but don't expect me to ever speak to either of you again. Not to you, Omar, and certainly not to you, Sasha. You have chosen your path. Now you'll have to live with the consequences. She turned and marched toward the master bedroom to finish packing. Taylor and Morgan followed her, shooting us looks of pure hatred. Derek and his wife hurriedly gathered their children's things, muttering among themselves about ingratitude and disrespect. Omar's father stayed a moment longer. He walked over to Sasha and put a hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry, he said simply. I should have said something sooner. I should have defended you. Sasha nodded, unable to speak. Through the tears that were now falling freely, he nodded back and went out to help load the suitcases into the car. Omar collapsed onto the sofa, his head in his hands. I could see him trembling, processing everything that had just happened. He had defied his mother for the first time in his life, and even though he had done the right thing, it was clearly costing him every fibre of his being. I went to Sasha and hugged her. She clung to me as if I were her lifeline, sobbing into my shoulder. They weren't tears of sadness, not entirely. They were tears of relief, of liberation, of years of holding it in silence, finally coming to an end. The next 30 minutes were organized chaos, suitcases being dragged, boxes being loaded, children crying because they didn't want to leave. Denise moved through the house with the wounded dignity of a dethroned queen, collecting every little thing that belonged to her, as if each object were proof of the injustice she had suffered. At one point, Taylor tried to take a decorative lamp from the living room. "That lamp stays here," I said firmly. "I bought it." Taylor lied brazenly. "No, I bought it," Sasha said, raising her voice for the first time. 8 months ago at that antique shop downtown. It cost $10 and I paid cash. I can show you the receipt if you want." Taylor released the lamp in a fury and stormed out of the house without another word. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, all the suitcases were in the cars. There were 2 vehicles parked outside, Denise's sedan and Derek's truck. The children were already buckled into their seats, still crying and asking why they had to leave. Denise came out of the house for the last time, carrying her handbag. She stopped at the threshold of the door, looking at all of us with an expression that tried to be contemptuous, but couldn't completely hide the pain. "Omar," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Last chance, come with us. Don't let these women destroy our family." Omar, who was standing next to Sasha with his arm around her, shook his head slowly. "I've made my decision, Mum. My place is here." Denise pressed her lips into a thin line. "Then so be it, but when you realize your mistake, when you see that you chose wrong, don't come looking for me. This door closes today and it won't open again." "That is your choice," Omar said, his voice calm but firm. "I am only choosing my wife. You are the one turning that into a war." Denise didn't answer. She simply turned around and walked to her car with her back straight and her head held high. Taylor and Morgan got into the car with her. Derek, his wife, and their children got into the truck. Omar's father was the last to get in, giving us one last apologetic look before closing the car door. The engine started. The cars began to move slowly down the gravel driveway toward the gate. Sasha, Omar, and I stood on the porch, watching them drive away. No one spoke. We just listened to the crunch of the tires on the gravel, the sound of the engines, and then the silence when they finally disappeared from view. Sasha was the first to move. She turned to Omar and hugged him tightly, sobbing against his chest. He hugged her back, his own tears finally falling. "I'm sorry," Omar whispered again and again. "I am so sorry, Sasha. I should have listened to you. I should have defended you from the beginning. I'm sorry." She couldn't reply. She just cried and clung to him as if she were afraid he would leave too. I let them have their moment. I stood on the porch, looking out at the empty driveway, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel happy. I just felt tired, relieved, and hopeful that maybe, just maybe, this would mark a new beginning for my daughter. After several minutes, I walked over to them and placed my hand on Sasha's shoulder. "Are you two okay?" I asked softly. Sasha nodded, wiping her face. "Yes, Mum, I think so." Omar looked at me with red eyes. "Vivian, I don't know what to say. You were right about everything and I was a coward." "You weren't a coward," I said honestly. "You were caught between 2 loyalties. That's not easy for anyone. The important thing is that you finally made the right decision." "Do you think I did the right thing?" he asked uncertainly. "Your family is Sasha now," I said firmly. And yes, you did the right thing. A mother who truly loves you would never put you in the position of having to choose between her and your happiness. She forced you to choose, not you. He nodded slowly, processing my words. It's going to take time, he said, to reconcile all this with what happened. I know, I said, and that's okay. Take all the time you need, but in the meantime, take care of your wife. She needs you now more than ever. I will, he promised, looking at Sasha with a tenderness that gave me hope. I promise you, Sasha, I will never let anyone treat you like that again. I will never ignore you when you tell me something is wrong. Sasha looked him in the eyes. Really? Really? He said, taking her face in his hands. You are the most important thing in my life, and I should have shown you that from the beginning. They kissed, a kiss full of apologies and promises, and I, feeling that my work here was done, began to walk toward my car. You're leaving already, Mom? Sasha asked, separating from Omar. You two need time alone, I said, to talk, to heal, to start over. But will you come tomorrow? She asked in a small voice, still needing my presence, my support. I'll come when you need me, I said, smiling. But for now, this is your house, your space, your life, and you need to live it without your mum watching every step. She nodded, understanding, but I saw the shine of tears in her eyes. Thank you, Mum, for everything, for defending me, for not letting me get lost. I'm never going to let you get lost, I said, hugging her one last time. That's what mothers do. We're there in the darkest moments, reminding our daughters who they truly are. I got into my car and started the engine. Before driving off, I rolled down the window and looked at them one last time. Omar, I said, catching his attention, take good care of her, because if I ever find her crying in that kitchen again, next time I won't just kick out your family, I'll kick you out too. I wasn't joking, and he knew it. He nodded solemnly. It won't happen again. You have my word. Good. I started the car and began driving down the gravel path. In the rearview mirror, I could see them standing together on the porch, embracing, watching me drive away. They looked small in the distance, fragile, but also united in a way they hadn't been before. I drove back to the city with my mind full of everything that had happened. My hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from the adrenaline that was still rushing through my veins. I had faced Denise and her entire family. I had defended my daughter in a way I never thought I would have to do again. And though I felt exhausted, I also felt alive in a way I hadn't experienced in years. When I arrived at my apartment downtown, it was almost evening. The street lights were beginning to turn on, and I could hear the familiar sound of traffic, the voices of neighbors, the urban life that had been my home for so long. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat down in my favorite armchair, the one I had bought 20 years ago, which knew every curve of my tired body. My phone rang. It was Sasha. Mom! Her voice sounded different, lighter, freer. You made it home safely. Yes, my love, I'm home having tea. Omar and I have been talking, she said, really talking for the first time in weeks. He apologized for everything, for not listening to me, for not defending me, for letting his family treat me like that. And what did you tell him? I told him I forgave him, but that things had to change, that if we were going to stay together, I needed to know he would be on my side when it mattered, that I couldn't feel alone in my own marriage again. And what did he say? He cried, Mom. He really cried. He said he was ashamed of himself, of how he let things go so far, that he had been so programmed to obey his mother that he didn't realize he was betraying his wife in the process. I felt my chest ease a little. Maybe Omar really had learned something from all this. Maybe this marriage had a chance after all. I'm glad, my love. Truly. We're going to clean the house together, Sasha continued. The whole house. Change the sheets, wash everything they touched, reorganize the spaces. Omar says he wants the house to feel like ours again, not a reminder of what happened. That's a good idea, I said. Sometimes we need to physically clean a space to be able to heal emotionally. Mum, her voice became softer, more vulnerable. Do you think I'm a bad person for kicking out Omar's family? No, I replied without hesitation. You are a woman who finally defended her right to live with dignity in her own house. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you strong. His mum said horrible things before she left. She said I had destroyed their family, that I was manipulative, that Omar was going to regret choosing me. Those are the words of a woman who lost control, I said firmly. They have nothing to do with you and everything to do with her. Denise is used to manipulating her son, to having power over him. When you and I confronted her, that power disappeared, and that terrifies her. Do you think Omar can forgive me someday? I mean, if his relationship with his mother is ruined because of this. Sasha, I interrupted her, listen to me carefully. You didn't ruin anything. Denise ruined her own relationship with her son by putting him in an impossible position. A good mother wants to see her son happy, even if that means taking a step back. She didn't do that. She chose control over love. Those are the consequences of her own actions, not yours. I heard her breathe on the other end of the line, processing my words. Thank you, Mum, for coming today, for not leaving me alone. I'll never leave you alone, I promised. But now I need you to be strong, to stand firm on your boundaries, because Denise will try to come back. She will call Omar. She will play the victim. She will try to manipulate him into feeling guilty. And when that happens, you two need to be united. We will be, Sasha said with a determination that filled me with pride. Omar promised me he won't let his mother manipulate him again. He says he's going to set clear boundaries. They can see each other, but in neutral places and for short periods. Never living with us again, never surprise invasions again. That sounds fair, I said. Omar has the right to have a relationship with his mother if he wants, but that relationship cannot come at the expense of your peace of mind. We talked for almost another hour. She told me how they had found things hidden all over the house, belongings of the Hayes family they had intentionally left behind to have an excuse to return. A scarf of Denise's in the closet, the children's toys under the sofa, Taylor's toothbrush still in the bathroom. I'm going to pack everything up and send it to them, Sasha said. I don't want anything of theirs here. When we finally hung up, I sat in my armchair for a long time looking out at the city lights. I thought about my own mother, who had died 30 years ago. I wondered if she would have been proud of what I did today, how I defended my daughter. I think she would. I think she would understand that sometimes love means being fierce. It means facing dragons. It means saying no when everyone expects you to say yes. The following days were quiet. Sasha called me every night to tell me how things were going. She and Omar were working on their marriage, really talking for the first time about expectations, boundaries, family. They were going to couples therapy, something Sasha had suggested, and Omar had accepted without resistance. The therapist says Omar has what they call an enmeshment with his mother. Sasha explained to me in one of our calls that he never developed healthy boundaries between her and him, which is why it's so hard for him to tell her no. And what does Omar say about that? He says it makes sense that he always felt he had to please his mother to be a good son, that the idea of disappointing her terrified him more than anything else. At least he's recognizing it, I said. That's the first step. 1 week after the incident, Denise started calling. First, she called Omar directly, but he didn't answer. Then she started sending him text messages, each one more manipulative than the last. Sasha read some of them to me. Your father has heart problems because of you. I can't sleep thinking about how my own son betrayed me. I hope you're happy knowing you destroyed your mother. "How is Omar responding?" I asked. "He's not responding," Sasha said with satisfaction. The therapist told him not to respond to the manipulation, to only reply when she could talk without trying to make him feel guilty. So far, she hasn't been able to. "Good," I said. Maintaining boundaries is the hardest part, especially at the beginning, but it gets easier with time. 2 weeks later, I received my own call from Denise. It was late at night, almost 10 o'clock. "Vivian?" Her voice sounded different, softer, more vulnerable. "I need to talk to you." "About what?" I asked cautiously. "About what happened, about my son, about everything." There was something in her tone that made me hesitate. She didn't sound like the furious, manipulative woman who had stormed out of that house 2 weeks ago. She sounded tired, maybe even repentant. "Fine," I finally said. "Speak." "I didn't realize," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't realize what I was doing, how I was treating Sasha. In my mind, I was just being part of the family, helping, being present. But my husband made me see that it wasn't like that I was being abusive." Silence, then a sound that sounded like a choked sob. "Yes," she finally admitted, "abusive. That word has been haunting me. I never thought I would be the kind of person who would make someone feel that way." "But you did," I said, not softening my words. "You turned Sasha's home into her prison. You treated her like a servant. And when she tried to defend herself, you made her feel like she was the one who was wrong." "I know," Denise said, her voice broken. "I know now, and I don't know how to fix it. Omar won't answer my calls. Sasha probably hates me, and I just want my son back." "Then start by respecting his boundaries," I said firmly. "Stop calling him 20 times a day. Stop sending him messages trying to make him feel guilty. Stop making this about you and your pain and start acknowledging the pain you caused." "But I'm hurting," Denise said with a broken voice. "It hurts not to be able to talk to my son. It hurts to know I lost him." "You haven't lost him," I replied. "But you will lose him if you keep doing the same thing. Omar needs space. He needs time to heal and strengthen his marriage. And if you truly love him, you will give him that time without conditions. And if he never forgives me, then you will have to live with the consequences of your actions," I said without mercy. "Just as Sasha had to live with the consequences of your abuse for 2 weeks. Just as Omar now has to live with the guilt of not defending her sooner." There was a long silence. I could hear her ragged breathing, her contained sobs. "What am I supposed to do?" she finally inquired. "How can I rectify this situation?" "Begin by composing a letter to him," I proposed. "Not a digital message nor a phone call. A tangible letter wherein you assume full accountability for your conduct, devoid of any pretext or rationalizations. Specifically, you must acknowledge the nature of your transgression and its impact on Sasha. Subsequently, grant him the autonomy to determine whether or not he wishes to respond. Should he remain silent, you must honor his reticence and dedicate yourself to introspection, to understanding the root cause of your actions, ensuring such behavior is never repeated." "Understood," Denise responded in a subdued tone. "I shall do so. I will write the correspondence." "Denise," I interjected before ending the call, "one final matter. If this endeavor is another stratagem, an attempt to reassert dominance over Omar, I am issuing a solemn warning. It will prove futile. Sasha and I are vigilant, and we will not permit you to inflict further harm upon him. This is not an act of manipulation," she stated with haste. "I give you my word. I simply desire the return of my son. If that necessitates personal transformation, then I am prepared to change." I disconnected the line, uncertain of her sincerity. Time would reveal the truth. Individuals who employ manipulative tactics may feign remorse, but their true disposition inevitably surfaces. Approximately 1 month after the entire ordeal, Sasha extended an invitation for lunch at the property. Upon my arrival, the estate was nearly unrecognizable. The garden boasted newly planted flora. The exterior walls had been repainted a delicate shade of yellow. Fresh drapes adorned the windows, a new table graced the dining area, and the entire dwelling exuded an atmosphere of pristine cleanliness, suggestive of a fresh start. "Do you find it pleasing?" Sasha inquired, her countenance illuminated by a radiant smile I hadn't witnessed in months. Omar and I have undertaken renovations in every section. Our objective was to imbue the residents with a sense of novelty, devoid of any lingering associations with the recent unpleasantness. "It is exquisite," I affirmed, speaking from the heart. "It truly feels like a sanctuary." Omar emerged from the kitchen bearing a tray laden with lemonade. He too appeared transformed, exhibiting a greater degree of composure and presence. He greeted me with a heartfelt embrace. "Vivian, thank you for accepting our invitation. Sasha was eager to share the improvements with you." We settled in the garden beneath the dappled shade of a guava tree. Sasha spoke of her aspirations to launch a home-based bakery, a lifelong ambition she had previously lacked the courage to pursue. Omar, in his support, had installed a compact auxiliary oven in the kitchen exclusively for her use. "And your mother?" I eventually inquired, broaching the subject that had remained unaddressed. Omar sighed. "She dispatched the letter you recommended. It was challenging to read. She acknowledged her culpability without offering excuses. She offered a specific apology to Sasha for every action and utterance, and stated her understanding should we choose to cease contact." "And what was your decision?" I prompted. Sasha replied, "We conveyed our appreciation for her apology, but emphasized our need for an extended period of reflection. We indicated that when we felt prepared, we might consider meeting in a neutral location for brief intervals, but she would never again be permitted entry into our home unless she demonstrated, through tangible actions rather than mere words, that a genuine change had occurred." "And she acquiesced?" "Yes," Omar confirmed. "She declared she would wait indefinitely, willing to undertake any measure necessary to reconstruct trust." "We shall observe," I remarked, a note of skepticism in my voice. "Time will ascertain the authenticity of her intentions." "I am aware," Omar concurred with a nod. "Hence we are in no rush. Sasha remains my paramount concern. If my mother cannot honor this reality, she will be compelled to confront the ramifications." We spent the remainder of the afternoon engaged in shared meals, laughter, and the recounting of personal anecdotes. It marked the first occasion in a considerable duration that I had witnessed Sasha genuinely happy and at peace. Observing Omar's affectionate gaze upon her, filled with protective love and sincere attentiveness, instilled in me a sense of optimism regarding the potential longevity of their union. As I prepared to depart, Sasha intercepted me on the porch. "Mother," she articulated, intertwining her hands with mine, "I have never adequately expressed my gratitude for your intervention, for your presence that day, for standing up for me when I was incapable of doing so myself." "There is no need for thanks," I replied. "Isn't that what mothers do?" She persisted. "Not all mothers exhibit such devotion. Many women your age would have remained on the sidelines, deeming it a marital conflict for the couple to resolve. However, you arrived. You confronted an entire family on my behalf. You risked estrangement from Omar. You risked exacerbating the situation. Yet you proceeded, recognizing the inherent righteousness of your course of action." Tears welled in my eyes. "You are my daughter," I stated simply, "and no individual under any circumstances possesses the prerogative to subject you to such treatment. Had I not intervened, had I allowed you to persist in such a predicament, I would never have forgiven myself." We embraced with profound affection a mother and daughter, survivors of disparate trials, bound by an indissoluble love. "I love you, Mum," Sasha whispered. "I love you too, my darling, always." I commenced my drive back to the city as the sun began its descent, casting the sky in hues of orange and pink. My thoughts turned to the preceding month's events. I contemplated how a seemingly insurmountable crisis had found its resolution, how my daughter had reclaimed her voice, her resilience, and her home. I remained uncertain about Denise's future trajectory, whether her transformation would be enduring or if she would eventually revert to her habitual patterns. However, this uncertainty held less significance now, for Sasha had discovered the means to assert herself. Omar had learned to safeguard her, and I was confident that I had acted with integrity. There are junctures in life where compassion and patience are paramount. Conversely, there are occasions where unwavering resolve and fortitude are imperative. On that day at the property, I embodied both. I fulfilled the role of the mother my daughter required during her most challenging hour. As I navigated the illuminated urban thoroughfares, accompanied by the gentle melody of the radio, I allowed myself to experience a sentiment I had long suppressed: pride. Pride in my own actions, in my daughter's strength, and in the formidable woman she had become. Ultimately, this is the maternal calling: to cultivate resilience in our daughters, to instill in them a profound sense of self-worth, to impress upon them that they merit respect, and that no relationship is worth sacrificing one's dignity for. And when they falter in these teachings, when life's adversities cause them to lose sight of their identity, we are there to offer steadfast support, to urge them forward, to remind them of their inherent strength, and to stand by them as they navigate their battles. This, in essence, is the essence of motherhood. It transcends the mere act of procreation. It involves imparting the wisdom of dignified living, demonstrating through personal example the value of confronting adversity, acting as a bulwark in moments of vulnerability, and serving as a reflective surface that reaffirms their true selves when the world seeks to diminish them. Upon my return to my apartment that evening, I felt the cumulative weight of my 70 years, yet simultaneously experienced a resurgence of vitality, a sense of youthful vigor. I had allocated nearly all my accumulated savings towards the acquisition of that property. I had placed my relationship with my daughter's husband in jeopardy. I had confronted an entire family without a trace of apprehension, and would readily do so again without hesitation. For that dwelling, that parcel of land acquired through a lifetime of diligent labor, represented far more than mere real estate. It symbolized independence, security, and a woman's inherent capacity to possess that which is inviolable. When that security was imperiled, and that haven transformed into a confinement, I acted as any mother would for her child. I restored her home. I reinstated her voice. I returned her life. In doing so, I imparted the most crucial lesson of all. Irrespective of age or the number of setbacks encountered, one always possesses the inherent right and the formidable power to rise and declare, "No more." That night before retiring, I received a final communication from Sasha. It was a photograph of her and Omar in the backyard, embracing and genuinely smiling. Accompanying the image were 3 simple words: "Thank you for everything." I smiled, set aside my phone, and closed my eyes, assured that my daughter had finally found peace, that her home was unequivocally hers, that her life belonged solely to her, and that should she ever require my assistance again, I would be there within 5 minutes, prepared to engage in battle once more. For this is the maternal commitment: unwavering perseverance, resolute defiance, and an absolute refusal to permit any harm to befall our daughters without accountability. Never. Did you enjoy this narrative? And from which city are you listening? Let's connect in the comments section. If the story resonated with you, your super thanks would be greatly appreciated, enabling me to continue sharing similar narratives. Thank you immensely for your kind support. I eagerly await your thoughts on this story. On your screen, you will find 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. My channel offers a wealth of additional content. Please remember to subscribe. Until our next life story, with love and deep respect.